Hi, once again, welcome back to Toilets and Titles. My name is Justin Stevens. I'm here to break down your Pittsburgh Steelers tonight. This will wrap up our AFC North division. That'll put two divisions down, and we've got two in the works already, and I will start putting in the work for the AFC West within the next day or two, and hopefully we can try to get all these knocked out before the season starts. Starting to get our backs up against the wall here with kickoff right around the corner, but we're excited about that as well. If we don't get them all in, we don't get them all in. It's all right. But we're going to do our best to try. Don't forget, you can check us out at Toilets and Titles. You can check out John at Coach Sheps. Nate is at Nate_Dirt19. And myself at JustinFF_. We are available for questions. We do check the Toilets and Titles account regularly, and we also check our personal accounts as well. Also, you can listen to our typical normal shows on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and Spotify. And, of course, right now I'm live on YouTube and Periscope. You can go back and check out all of our old YouTube videos as well. But let's get started with the Steelers breakdown. As usual, I'm going to start off with our fantasy studs. It's pretty simple with the Pittsburgh Steelers. In fantasy football, you're not going to have a lot of studs this year. I just don't believe in it. I don't believe in maybe Juju, but I got to believe that that's more of a breakout after the season we had last season. So I'm just going to move right on over into the breakouts. And I do have Juju as my breakout for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I say breakout again, actually, because he broke out 2 years ago. We have to throw out last season, though, because without Ben, it is an entirely different team. Think about last offseason. The big question was if Juju could do it without AB. It was a small sample size, but his best games in 2018 were games that were without AB. Last year, again, another small sample size. We had one game without AB with Big Ben and Juju, and it was kind of unimpressive at the time. It was only 6 catches for 78 yards. In that 1 week, and then Ben went down in week 2. But if you look back on it now, that one game was against Stephon Gilmore and the Patriots D. And knowing what we know now about that Patriots defense, 78 yards on 6 catches really isn't all that bad. It was a decent game compared to what the Patriots gave up to a lot of receivers last season. I got to believe that with Ben back, it's not going to all just go away. And that it should start to bounce back. But 2 years ago, Ben was an absolute beast. He was top 5 in nearly every relevant passing stat. That's not all, like I said, it's not all just going to go away. But at the same time, he is older, and it was a pretty serious injury last season. So I also don't expect him to completely bounce back either. But Juju is a monster. They're great in Pittsburgh at recognizing wide receiver talent. So he's going to bounce back. And I also kind of like Deontay Johnson a little bit. I think that he could get a little bit of that residual game from Juju's game on the other side, much like Juju did from AB. Not comparing the two at all. I'm not saying that Deontay Johnson is the next Juju and Juju is the next AB. I don't mean to say that at all. But I do think that both of them could be pretty viable wide receivers at their ADPs. Let's see. What else did I write about this? I've got that they don't have the best running game, and they will likely rely on the pass a lot again. That makes sense. They've got the Bengals, and they've got the Browns twice this season, just like every year. Those divisional games are big. They're going to throw the ball a lot in those 4 games. That helps out a lot as well. Juju's ADP right now is the 401, which makes him the wide receiver 12, and a top 5 is not out of the realm of possibility for Juju this season. I'm not calling it as a top 5, but I wouldn't be surprised if he finished there either. And then again, Deontay Johnson's ADP is at the 901, so that's also pretty intriguing to me. That's far enough down. He's only had really a few big splashes and plays to this point, but again, getting that residual numbers from Juju's overflow on the other side is intriguing to me. Beware of the letdowns. This isn't a common letdown for a lot of people. I take that back. Compared to the ADP, it looks like this may not be a common letdown. But I have heard other people kind of put down the running game of James Conner a little bit. And that's kind of a bad way to say that. James Conner is a talented enough running back, I guess, but for whatever reason, it doesn't work out for me. And you guys know I don't really typically dive into the analytics and the numbers as much. It's more about the eye test for me, and he's just never done it for me. But the player for the Steelers that I have to say is the letdown's got to be James Conner. And I'm not even mad at you if you do draft him because his ADP is at the 303. That's the RB15, most likely. Hopefully, if you are drafting him at that point, he's as your second running back. But there are a lot of people that might take a wide receiver first, and then he's your running back one. I would not trust him as my running back one with his injury history, his cancer history, and a COVID season. That's not fun to think about. I mean, honestly, the dude really shouldn't even be playing, in my opinion, but he's still going to play. So the fact that he simply isn't a workhorse or an uber efficient back also are all just kind of warning signs for me. But like I said, RB15 is attainable for him if Ben can even bring back even 80% of what that offense was 2 seasons ago. But just to give you a rough idea on Conner, again, his ADP is at RB15 right now. I have him as the RB25. John has him as the RB23. Nate has him as his RB24. And Joshua over at FusionFFB.com, where you can find our rankings, has him at the RB23. So all 4 of us are pretty low on him compared to the ADP of RB15. And then maybe that RB15 hasn't been updated since a few days ago when I wrote this, but at that time, that's what it was. So again, that's going to be your big letdown guy of the season if you draft him as your RB1. If he's your RB2 and you're confident in that, then like I said, I'm not going to be mad at you for it because he could possibly perform to that. There's just a big possibility of a letdown in my mind. The Mr. Reliable here. I'm not going to really choose a Mr. Reliable outside of Juju. I do think that Ben has the potential to be a Mr. Reliable in the games that he plays, but unfortunately in his 16-season career, he's only had 4 seasons where he didn't miss games. So that's kind of hard to say that an injury-prone 957-year-old quarterback is going to be your Mr. Reliable. But if he does play and he's in the games, there's good potential for big points. But so I'm going to have to say that Juju is my Mr. Reliable. The other wide receivers are just unproven. Ebron had 1 great season with Andrew Luck, who absolutely loved to pepper his tight ends. Ben doesn't have a history of doing that, so I'm not really huge on Ebron this season. We've already discussed the questions around Conner. So I'm really just talking up a lot about Juju, really, and then maybe Deontay Johnson a little bit. James Washington just kind of went to the wayside over the last couple of seasons. And then Joshua just ringed in. Looks like he's watching. He's up late with me. What's up, brother? He chimed in that Conner is also on his fade list as well. So, and which I already hit on that as well. So, the IDP names to know for your Pittsburgh Steelers are really any Steelers in the linebacker core. I mean, between T.J. Watt, Devin Bush, or Bud Dupree, you're not going to go wrong. They're all going to get you big fantasy points. That's pretty typical of a Steelers defense. And honestly, in that draft that I did last night, it was a redraft, but they still do team defenses. It's kind of old school. The first defense taken off the board was the Pittsburgh Steelers, which kind of floored me a bit. Then the guy, he's also kind of old school, and he knows a little bit about the defenses. The guy that took him, he's a friend of the show as well, Steve Evans. So he actually, I'm sure he's got pretty good reasonings for that. But it was kind of surprising to see him go before the 49ers and the Patriots and whatnot. But there is a lot to be excited about, and you also have Cameron Hayward, and don't forget Stephon Tuitt at defensive end because he was injured for 2/3 of the season last year, so he's going to be back. And then, of course, Minkah Fitzpatrick will continue to make huge plays for the Steelers as well. And I think that about wraps it up for the Steelers, which means that wraps it up for the AFC North. We are done with the AFC North and the AFC South. And again, Nate working on that NFC North as we speak, and John working on the NFC East for us. These videos, I knocked out 3 of them tonight. They should all be posted tomorrow night, and at some point by tomorrow night. And I'll add to the other shows as well if you want to watch the other ones. But stay on the lookout. Hopefully we can get all these done before the season starts. And I appreciate you tuning in to watch our show. And Joshua, have a good night, bud.